whiskey and whatever.
So speaking of co-ops, had a coffee with a mutual friend of ours, and we were talking about kind of the next generation of business model, where somebody has a skill set, and that skill set can be applied within a number of organizations. It's not really like a freelancer thing, but within this large, kind of more nebulous organization that multiple people can contribute to multiple teams or sub-organizations.
Yeah.
Is that making sense?
Yeah. So you like the idea?
I like the idea. What he and I agreed on, which is probably the major obstacle, is how do you structure that legally and how do you structure that financially? It's like he brought up the way Andreessen's doing a lot of stuff now, right? So if you get funded by Andreessen, they're going to give you a certain amount of administrative and operational support. So you don't have to think about accounting, for example, or you don't have to think about the compliance issues. You just have to build your product. Let's say we've got an idea.
Yeah.
So you and I have an idea, we're going to build an app, right? But we don't have any money.
Yeah.
We have enough money that we can bootstrap ourselves, maybe hire somebody to help us out, but there's all of that other stuff that we don't want to deal with. Legal, accounting, complying, all that kind of stuff that we don't want to deal with, but we need somebody to deal with that for us. Like right now in my company, I've got an accountant that handles bookkeeping. I've got outsourced HR. And guess who gets to communicate between all of them? Me.
Yeah.
Right? And that takes my time away. If those guys were on a team that I could go to and pay them as a package, I could say, all right, I'm paying all you guys together, whatever it is. Let's say it's $3,000 a month to run that side of the business. But if those guys were on a team together, where I didn't have to be the middleman trying to communicate between all of them, and I could just go and buy that outsourced as a service, that'd be kind of cool. So what we're saying here is that if there were all of those things, if the team was there, an entire corporate structure was in place, from chief executive down to mailroom guy, and I came in with my idea and I got to use any bit and piece of that organization as I needed, kind of a la carte, but I had one service fee to pay for it as an organization.
Who are you paying the service fee to?
To the organization. That's like my dues as a member of the co-op, right? So you get the security of a large organization, but you get the entrepreneurial mentality of a co-working facility or of a startup, is that we could create a co-op of other consultants. And what it comes down to is you've got, let's say you and I are it's not a joint venture, it's not anything. We're just in a co-op together.
Okay.
And we have complementary but somewhat overlapping skill sets and services that we provide to the general public.
Yeah.
And I say, all right, I'm going to go out as 9 Labs and I'm going to sell your services because you're good at marketing, we'll say, right? But I'm good at design, as an example. But you're out selling your services as Rick, and you're selling my services as Rick. Mm-hmm. So when your phone rings, how are you going to answer the phone? You're going to answer it as Rick. What if it's my client that I sold calling you? Well, now we have a problem, because who's working for me? Is it 9 Labs or is it Rick? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see.
So that's why creating the larger organization that has a single entity kind of makes sense.
Maybe some people don't know this, but we were involved, when Amy and I decided to launch Strongbox West, it was 2009, we knew about jellies, we knew about some tweet ups.
Yeah.
I think people probably forget those words even, but there were jellies happening in Manhattan and Brooklyn and in San Francisco and tweet ups. And then, it evolved into co-working. And we got involved with, the few co-working places that were around. And, we were having discussions online about, is the word hyphenated? And that's how deep the conversations were. They weren't deep at all because we were just beginning to scratch the surface of this new thing called co-working. And co-working, to me, is, like less walls and more collaboration. So like what, he's talking about, I think happens naturally if you bring people together. And you've got things that help facilitate connecting, like alcohol, like mixers, wine tasting, golf outing. A lot of business gets done in those settings. More gets done in those settings than a lot of these, these propped up business meetings, little gets done in a business meeting sometimes, and the more people that are involved, the less is getting done. If the meeting's 2 people, a lot of shit's getting done
The
probably.
structure's too rigid.
Yeah. So, but I mean, and people are kind of, well, not everybody, but fluid. So business can move. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I think those things will happen. And I know Bob, I know Sue, let's make this thing happen. And we'll start a little company and we'll call it, ABC or Acme Corp. And maybe it exists for 2 months, 3 months. That happens. You're going to see teams of people that are collaborating more and more. Putting a structure on it, I don't know. It's kind of like,
Well, that's part of the question. It's like how much structure is enough?
keep it as simple
It
as
has to
possible.
be pretty nebulous, but it also has to be, and maybe it's the curation, maybe that's the structure. Is somebody there paying attention and making those connections when they see that they need to be made? When they see that they maybe have been missed, right? So out there in the world, we've got people with different skill sets. You know some people and I know some people that should probably know each other.
Mhm.
Right? But unless that connection gets made, that's not going to grow. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So that's where the curation part needs to happen, and that's where maybe the larger true co-working endeavors need to have and maybe it's not the right term, but like community manager. But community manager doesn't mean I'm the guy posting on social media. It means you're the person that's introducing people to other people and creating that environment where people can communicate and collaborate on things.
Yeah, but if you know people that know people, like, when you make a connection with me, say, Rick, you need to know so-and-so, I'm like, oh, okay, I do. If you've told me, you've got credibility. So if you've got good chaperones or good shepherds.
So it's that third party, that proxy introduction that makes it weird.
Yeah.
Because neither one of you know that person. They're just a facilitator.
Yeah. But I think if you have social events around, a lot of the social events that we've done, I think have brought people together, And you'll just find people that are like mine. They're going to gravitate to each other. But I think you'll see like companies change, and companies will change the way that they work with each other, and then the way they work with outside firms too. It's probably going to become a lot looser, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
We'll start working with your company, and you've pulled together 5 guys. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And so you might see ad agencies pop up where you hire one creative director and then he puts together the team, but there is no Smith, Jenkins, and Wilson on the door. There is no door. Maybe it's pop-up. We get pop-up vendors, pop-up stores, pop-up productions. Maybe you have these pop-up companies for just serving a purpose. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. Is maybe there's a little bit too much importance placed on the longevity of a company to determine its success. If you start a company and you run that company for 2 years and you make your money and that company's shut it down, move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, why not? And maybe you're on to the next company. It's a new thing. It's okay, we're going to do this now.
Yep.
So, you're always iterating, pivoting, whatever you want to call it, the jargon of the day. But I know it's a little overused, but
Don't say that.
that's okay.
Whatever.